Hello guys, today I'm going to be doing a video on Wolfenstein The New Order using a variety of GPUs. This is our next free Epic Games game, which is pretty exciting. It's a game from 2016 I think. It was on the PS4 and all that. We're going to be using a variety of GPUs, starting it off with the RTX 3060 Ti. I know the ordering is a bit off, but I just had to show you guys something first. The game has a capped FPS, and it's capped to 60 FPS, and you can unlock it, but for some people, the actual in-game time will also speed up with the frame rate. So throughout the video I will go ahead and show the capped frame rate and the uncapped frame rate as well. There's a mod to fix the actual speed issue, but I didn't test that out. But starting off with 1080p, we're getting 60 FPS, GPU sitting at 40% usage, and yeah, we got plenty of headroom. So let's go ahead and uncap the FPS. Alright, I've actually gone ahead and uncapped the FPS, and you can see that we're getting 120 to 140 FPS now. GPU sitting at 80% utilization. And this is definitely a CPU bottleneck. We are running a Ryzen 3700X here in this video, and but as you can see, the game's actually sped up quite a bit now. The actual particles, the AI, your movement speed. Let's go ahead and jump up to 1440p and see how it does at 1440p. We definitely have a 20% headroom, so it should still do well. Jumping into it with 1440p now, as we can see, our average FPS is over 1000 because we uncapped the FPS and we're sitting in the menus for a little bit. Wait for that to come down. But as we can see, FPS is ranging between the low 80s, but if you look at somewhere that's less demanding, we jump up to 120 FPS. I was expecting our FPS to be much higher than this, considering that we are using a 3060 Ti and the game is like 6 years old, but still above 60, so it's fine. Let's go ahead and jump up to 4K and see how it does then. Moving on from 1440p to 4K, you can see that we're getting just barely 60 FPS. We get a spike up to 75, sometimes 80 as well. But we're very close to 60 FPS now, and our GPU usage is sitting in the 70s to 90s. Now, something to keep in mind is that if you do end up uncapping your FPS, there's a huge range for your FPS to be in, I guess. Some areas you'll be getting 200 FPS really easily, and some areas will jump down to 80, 70. So it's very inconsistent, and it all depends on the situation that's going on the screen right now. I'm going to be jumping into it with the 750 Ti, much older card. But we're going to be playing the game at 1080p on the lowest preset. Wow, we're getting plenty of headroom right here. We are indoors, but we're getting 60 FPS at 1080p on the lowest preset. So we can actually go ahead and increase it to high. It's very surprising how well this is running. We actually have a 30% GPU headroom with the 750 Ti. Now, our VRAM is pretty much to its limit right now. It's sitting at 1.7 gigs, and we only have 2 gigs available to us. So that extra headroom doesn't really mean much, since if we increase the settings up, or our resolution up, we'll be using up more VRAM than we actually have available to us. But this game is very well optimized, but even though the FPS cap is kinda stupid, it's still running fantastic on these older cards. Now this was a PS4/Xbox One game, I believe. I don't think it came on the PS3 and Xbox 360, but it might have actually happened, I don't know. But either way, it's running really great right now. We do get some dips into the high 50s occasionally, but you don't really notice them anyway, so it doesn't really affect your gameplay. So what ended up happening was that I recorded this whole section with the 1050 Ti and the recording messed up, but in conclusion, at ultra settings, you do get 60 FPS in some areas with a pretty decent GPU headroom at like 70% usage pretty much, so you get 30%, 40% extra headroom. But in more open areas, it's very hard for you to hold 60. You drop down into the 45 FPS mark, and GPU is fully maxed out as well. And that's only at ultra preset. So the sweet spot ended up being the high preset as well for this card. Runs at 60 FPS very easily. The whole time that I recorded, it didn't actually fall below 60 ever, while at ultra settings it dropped down into the 40s pretty much. And I actually did uncap the FPS as well towards the end, and for that we were sitting at around 120, 130 FPS. As you can see, we're getting 60 FPS right now, and we have 40% GPU usage. So if I uncap the FPS, we should be able to get 130, 140 FPS if GPU was fully maxed out. Alright, now we're playing the game with an uncapped FPS. As you can see, it's very hard to actually play like this. There's an extra command you can put in that fixes that, but that didn't work for me, and it doesn't work for everyone. Yeah, I wouldn't not recommend uncapping the FPS. It was designed to run at 60, I guess, so you don't really want to, even though it does feel smoother to run the game at an uncapped FPS, it's just, you will run into issues. But yeah, there it is, uncapped FPS of 130 to 140. Alright, let's go ahead and jump to the GTX 1060, where I believe we should be able to actually play the game at ultra settings. Alright, moving on from the 1050 Ti, we are using the GTX 1060 now. Gonna go ahead and push it up to ultra preset, same as what we did with the 3060 Ti. Should be able to run it at 1080p at least anyway. And yeah, looks good so far. But did you see, as soon as we walked up the stairs, we're sitting at like 30% here, and as soon as we round the corner, the usage jumps up to 70%. It's very inconsistent at times. The area that you're playing in and what you're looking at matters heaps in this game. I remember with the switch port of the second game, what they ended up doing was they would put heaps of barriers in place just to cover up the render distance. So in return, it just lets you have more frames because the GPU doesn't have to work as hard. I'm going to play it for a little bit longer. I'm going to go ahead and uncap the FPS. I highly doubt we can actually use up the whole GPU at 1080p. If I was to guess, you could definitely play this game at 1440p, maybe 4K as well with this card. Getting 96 FPS at ultra settings. GPU is actually fully maxed out. The movement speed and the game running at a higher speed is kind of annoying. And I swear it seems like the game loads faster than the actual in-game time is running faster as well. Not the actual loading when going to a level, the loading during cutscenes where it says please wait loading, that seems to load faster when the time is sped up. Let's continue on with an next GPU, the RTX 3050. We better get out of here. Obviously it's going to run fantastic at ultra settings. We might even be able to push it up to custom settings and max it out there, but it's very unreliable, it seems like. So far at 1080p, it seems like it's running just like the GTX 1060. GPU sitting at 50%, so uncapping it would let us have 120 FPS. And one thing I forgot to mention as well at the GTX 1060 portion was that VRAM was sitting at 2.5 gigs, so even if you got a 3GB card, the game will still run fine. Alright, let's go ahead and uncap the FPS. Getting 111 FPS, 104. But again, it all depends on where you are and what you're looking at. So, whoa, that's creepy. Let's go ahead and push it up to 1440p. This card should be able to handle 4K as well. Maybe not on Ultra, but 1440p is no problem. Now playing at 1440p, our FPS range is wow. GPU's pretty much maxed out here. Kill him. Well, maybe we're not killing this guy. He's so tanky. Alright, lastly, jumping in with the RTX 3080. And look at our GPU usage, sitting at 10%. 10 to 20%. It's basically not even doing anything. And we're holding 60 FPS so far. I mean, I say so far, but we can obviously easily hold 60 with this card. If we can hold 60 with a 750 Ti. I'm not going to be spending too much time with this. I'm going to go ahead and get through each preset pretty quickly since we already know it's going to run well. And I will probably uncap the FPS at the end. We're getting 200 FPS with a 40% GPU usage. So we could technically be getting 400 FPS here. But as you can see, time is moving super quick right now. All the AI, everything's moving super fast. So let's go ahead and actually increase the resolution. 440p here. And exactly the same frame rate. We're a little bit lower than what we had before. We were sitting at 200, now we're sitting at 170. But GPU usage is still in the 50s. Maybe gone up a little bit, but like 5 to 10%. Alright, actually I didn't realize this before, but the game was running... The game reset itself back down to medium settings. So I have to go ahead and push it back up to ultra. And playing at ultra settings now, 1080p, we're getting 70% GPU usage at 200 FPS. So... still plenty of headroom at 200 FPS. We actually gained like 5% GPU usage. Now we're sitting in the 80s. And FPS has dropped quite a bit actually. We're sitting at 140s now. When we were sitting in the 170s, I believe. Running the game at 4K now. It actually reset itself back down to 60 FPS obviously. So we're going to have to go ahead and uncap the FPS. Toggle, palm, sync, to time. Alright, 4K. GPU is still not fully utilized, but our FPS has dropped quite a bit. We're sitting at 100 FPS. I said we were going to be sitting in the 90s. I was kind of close, but even then, GPU would be fully maxed out by then, so we'd probably be getting like 110, 120 FPS realistically. But normally you'll be forced to play at 60 FPS, which isn't bad. It just isn't as fluid as playing at 100 FPS. Alright, I think that's it for the video, guys. So I hope you enjoyed it, found it useful. If you did, give it a like and a subscription would be highly appreciated. See you next time.